People say I got a drinking problem, but I got no problem drinking at all. All right, good thing I'm not a singer, huh? All right, so what is the rule of thirds? And can we break that rule to make better composites? That's the topic of today's video tutorial. All right, so real quick before we get started, I got to show you something. Hold on just a second here. Check this mofo out. So I did this composite quite a while ago, probably about a year ago, and I never got the family a portrait to hang on their wall. So after anguishing over this for quite a while, I decided I'm going to go ahead and get this portrait and I'm going to frame it. If you guys aren't framing your portraits, I'm telling you, it is amazing. It really does make a huge difference when you frame your portrait. This portrait looks amazing, and I can't wait to give the family their portrait. They're going to absolutely love it. Alrighty, so today is all about the rule of thirds. All right, so I'm going to show you how you can set the guides in Photoshop so you can create your composites using these rule of thirds. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to explain the rule of thirds and how to use it. And then, best of all, we're going to look at some of my composites and we're going to see if they hold up to the rule of thirds or if they break them. I love to break some mofo rules. All right, so before we crack into the rule of thirds, I'd like for you to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to this channel if you want more awesome video tutorials like this on composite photography. And if you want more about composition, go to Photiversity, or that's Photiversity.com. And download my 5 compositional elements guide. Now, let's get started with a passionate look at the rule of thirds. And let's dig right into the rule of thirds here, which is made up of 2 vertical and 2 horizontal lines, each breaking this image up into 9 equal compartments. Now, as long as compositionally everything exists on these 4 lines or within the 4 points, and these are 4 primary points of interest, then we have a compositionally good image. Now, that is if we follow the rules and we abide by the standards of good composition. We will have a well-composed image if we abide to these rules. All right, so now that you know all about the rule of thirds, it's time to set up some guides in Photoshop. All right, so let's get you set up to follow the rule of thirds rules here, and we're going to set some guides in Photoshop. All right, so come down here to New Guide, and in New Guide, we're going to go with our vertical guides first. We're just going to hit 33%. And we're going to click OK. Repeat that with the new guides and 66%. Okay, so now we have our 2 vertical rule of third lines. Now we're going to go to create a new guide and we're going to set our horizontal guides at 33%. Okay, and then back up, new guide, and what is it? 66%. And okay, you have set the guides for your rule of thirds in Photoshop. All right, so now that you know all about the rule of thirds and how to set your guides in Photoshop to create better composites or not, breaking rules is awesome. Let's move on to look at some of my best composites to see how they hold up or not to the rule of thirds. And here we are with my top composites, maybe not my top composites, but a few of my composites, and we're going to see if I follow the rule of thirds or if I am a rule breaker of the rule of thirds. And to start off with here, my Texas Dream composite, which is really a favorite that I've done and one of my favorites of my wife's daughter and granddaughter here with the beer can. And if you look, I believe this composite definitely follows the rule of thirds, as the little girl's face and beer can really do fall close to that top right point of interest and that right vertical rule of thirds line. So this is definitely a rule follower, even though the theme of it is a rule breaking theme. Okay. So moving on to my Bass Pro Fishing composite. This is another composite I believe follows the rule of thirds, as the fish coming out of the water is really very close to that bottom right point of interest. The lure there is right on that vertical rule of thirds line. If you look at that top rule of thirds line, falls right in on those three characters there in the boat. And then that bottom horizontal line falls right along that fish and the bobber that's coming out of the water there. So I believe this one, aside from the pterodactyls flying through the air there on the right vertical rule of thirds line, I think this is definitely a rule following composite. All right. Now moving on to my Rick Fairless's world, which was a portrait that I did for Rick Fairless to put in his office there at Strokers, Dallas. This is definitely a rule breaking composite. All right. So this, keeping with the motorcycle theme, we are breaking all the rules with this composite. There is so much going on in this composite. And if you look at our 4 points of interest, there's really nothing in there that matters a whole lot. And if you look along the horizontal and vertical lines, well, it would be almost impossible for something not to fall within those. There's nothing of very much interest that does fall within those areas. All right. So this is definitely a rule breaking composite for sure. Now, moving on to the Mowing Wars composite, which a lot of people are familiar with right now. I have a full tutorial that shows how I created this composite. This is, in my opinion, a rule following composite. All right. So our point of interest here at the top right point of interest really falls on Nico and the weed whacker there, which is significant for the entire composite. And if we look at our verticals and horizontal line rules of lines of thirds and all that kind of good stuff, we have clothes that fall on it. We have very close to Nico and his blower there. Lucas' head falls on the horizontal rule of thirds. I think this is definitely a rule following composite. And then lastly here we have Where It Counts, which is a family portrait I was commissioned to create for this family for a holiday card. In my opinion, this is mostly a rule breaking composite. And the reason I say that is because if you look at our 4 points of interest, nothing significant. You look at our horizontal and vertical lines, mostly nothing significant other than the fact that the little girl is hitting dad in the nuts with the golf club, which falls on that bottom horizontal line. And if you look at our horizon line, falls directly in the middle of the image, which is definitely a no-no. It does not follow on the either horizontal rule of thirds. So this is definitely a rule-breaking composite. Alrighty, so that was a fun time with the rule of thirds. And now that you know how to set your guides in Photoshop and you know when to use the rule of thirds to make your composites better, and better yet, when to break the rule of thirds to make your composites better, it's time to move on and start making some awesome pictures. Before you go though, don't forget to give this bad boy a thumbs up if you found value in it. Go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want more awesome video tutorials just like this. And don't forget, go on over to Photiversity.com and download my 5 compositional elements guide right now.